All right, so today we're gonna do some more machining. I forgot one kind of important little detail when I was machining these 3-point parts, mainly because I don't need them on all 3 links, because the outside links are getting the plates for the rear drawbar. I still need to machine the plates that go back here to run your bolts through to clamp the center mast in, because while shear bolts are, or not shear, while U-bolts are good for pulling, they're good in tension, they are not good in shear, and you don't want to be using U-bolts where you're picking up. So yeah, I gotta make the straps that go back here real quick. I got the bolts, I just don't have, forgot to make the straps. And I'm going to have to recut my pipe that I made to go between them, because I should have came out here and measured. I need about 3 inches. I can loosen these up and squeeze them together a little bit out here and lose some clearance, but for the most part I need a 3-inch gap in between them to straddle these 2 U-bolts to hold the coulter on. So yeah, because obviously originally this wasn't here, the row unit, well, it bolted to the row unit, so this is gonna go on about like so. The ones on my 4-row are mounted in the lowest set of holes, which raises it the highest it can go, so it's going to be right there. So I gotta go get some, I think I found some 1/2x2 down in the rack, and I think that's what it needs to be, is 1/2x2. Yeah, they had, at least judging by the, that's 2.5. I'll have to see what I can come up with for some steel. But we'll be able to, that's just 4 holes and easy enough, and then I'll throw some primer and paint on those so if they're ready. And then we can also get the plate mounting, or the backing plate machined. That's just going to be 9 holes too, but get the backing plate machined that the VIGA gauges are going to bolt on, and then once I actually have this mounted, then we can figure out how we're going to mount those VIGA gauges, because they're going to get bolted to the top of here, and actually they might end up, yeah, because I kind of plan on using these 2 top holes with a plate, and that's going to be what my strut going back for the drawbar is going to be, is bolted to here with a piece of box tube or something. And then that can probably get, the VIGA gauge post can probably get bolted here and here, and just make a little spacer for here and sandwich it that way. But we'll see how that plays out. So I'm going to go up and look at the 4-row real quick and measure what I need for strap material, and then we will get working on that. And I guess I can show you. Lily, do you belong over there? Hold on. These are the lower link brackets all assembled. Those turned out kind of nice. I like that color red. It's not I don't think it's quite correct, obviously, but I like that. It's got a nice hue to it. I like that color red. So anyway, let me get some steel figured out here, and then we will get back on the Bridgeport. Look at that. Piece of 1/2x2.5 hot roll. Must have been around for a minute, because it was on the very bottom of the pile in the very back of the rack. I had to dig for it. Naturally, all the bigger stuff was on top of it. I was kind of hoping it'd be a short stick, but it's about half a stick. So I just got to cut 2 pieces 9.5 inches long, and we'll be in business. Okay, I got my steel cut, so we can start doing some machining. Not that this is, you could really call this machining. It's punching a few holes. But anyhow, in current events, if anybody's following along with the world, Toby Keith passed away last night. Damn it. Which wasn't very pleasant news. It's crazy how fast he went south. It's amazing what cancer can do to somebody. It didn't take him long to go from being built like a brick shit house to, holy cow, that's Toby Keith. Sure doesn't look like him. I remember Red Solo Cup was probably his most well-known quote-unquote party song, and I was sophomore, junior in high school when that came out, and I was in advanced auto at that point for my first junior year. I had it for the first hour. But I remember auto class was kind of where they dumped most of the D-gens. Actually, take that back. I was not at advanced auto. That would have just been regular auto. I was in advanced auto senior year. But anyhow, auto was where they dumped all the degenerates that they couldn't really stick in any other class. Which I kind of felt bad for the auto shop teacher, because he was a good teacher. All he really wanted to do was see everybody succeed, and he kept back. But anyway, so not very many country music fans, mostly, you know, metalheads and rap and crap like that. But that being said, on the days when he had a country radio station playing on the radio, because every day he'd pick a different station. Whenever Red Solo Cup came on, the whole dang shop started singing it. It didn't matter who it was, because everybody loved the crap out of that song. But anyhow, just he was too young to go like that, but at least the suffering's over, because man, he looked like hell there toward the end. So anyhow, on to more pleasant things. Let's get this, and then I need to go in, and this is easy because the holes are going to be in the same distance from both ends. So all I've got to do is get set up on one hole, then we can flip the parts around. I could drill all 4 holes in one location. So go into 875 or 7/8 and get my pilot drill. Now that being said, if this was some sort of high tolerance, needs to be right dead nuts on location, you need all the holes to be where the holes need to be, you would want to, well, you would overcut your part and then come in and face it off with a mill or something to first square the edges, and B, make sure every part is the exact same size, because since these are just saw cut, your edges aren't going to be 100% perfectly square, and they're not going to be 100% the exact same length. So if you were doing something that was needed a higher degree of precision, you would not want to punch all 4 holes off of one setup, because since they're not the same length, you know, you just flip this around, you might not be the same distance here and this one, because it's not the same length. It's going to change your hole spread in between and yada yada yada. But we're making a couple straps to strap a 3-point mast to a toolbar. It's not a high degree of precision, so one easy setup is all you need. This bit's a goofy size, and we don't have a collet that is 100% correct for it. So you really got to run her home when you put it into the quill. And also, when you're changing parts, you want to avoid slamming them into your end stop, because if you hit it hard enough, you could slide your end stop and change your zero every time. So when you're going against your stops, you want to go nice and easy so you don't move it. You can see my bit got a little shorter because it was sliding out of the dang collet. Because it's a, oh, what size is this? What size is that? 13/32. And we do not have an, it's a straight shank, so it's a 13/32 shank, and we don't have a collet that is quite 13/32. We got all the way around it, we just don't have that. But Dad doesn't like running those short bits in the chuck, because that screws up the shanks, or you have the potential of screwing up the shanks. And these are kind of high dollar bits, so at least in a collet, if you spin them, you don't chew the shank up. To put it in the back drive and change belt speeds. Can probably run a little faster than that, but this is a good sharp bit, and it likes to take a big bite, so okay, there's those. That primer should be dry here in an hour, or dry enough here in an hour or so to throw a coat of paint on them. So in the meantime, we can make our mounting plate for these guys, and that'll be a flat plate, and then weld a piece of box tube or something. It'll end up being right here, but well, the piece of box tube just that it, you know, you get the idea. So the one thing I do have, I'll have to do is flip this guy around, because I need this gauge port, because this is the end that these clips are inserted from. This becomes the front, and I need this gauge port out the back, because there'll be a, on top of the box tube, I'll have a little tab, and I need to get a 1/4 inch stainless steel pipe union. There'll be a tab with a hole. I can weld that union in, so you screw the gauge in from the top, and then I'll need 2 stainless push-to-connect hose fittings, and then a short piece of like 1/8 or 1/4 inch. Actually, I think it's 1/8 inch. It's 4 gauges, but push-to-connect gauge hose. Run a gauge there for pressure. In this system, you got orifices, and the orifices are set up to put on my rate at a pressure, but because with that John Blue pump, you're setting your rate with the pump. Basically, all the orifices are doing at this point is providing resistance in the system, so that you don't have one row getting overfed because it's the path of least resistance. The orifices create back pressure so that everything gets fed equally, and that pump actually sets your rate. But the gauge is going to be here just as a redundant look, or to check and make sure that your pressure's not spiking or anything weird. But anyway, so we got to measure. I'm needing something about you probably get away with 3.5, 3 1/4, somewhere in there, by 16. Something thin, because we don't need a whole lot. Okay, let's go see what I got, or what we got, what Dad got. Okay, we had this piece of plate laying down in the scrap rack that's pretty much perfect. It's been flame cut out of something, out of a bigger piece of plate, and then 2 ends are saw cut. So it's a touch long and it's a touch fat, so I can take and make a saw cut down here to get rid of that gnarly flame cut edge and square it up, because it starts off at 3.5 and ends up at like 3 3/4, and cut this end off to make it down to 16, and it'll end up looking fairly decent. So we'll do that real quick, and then we can punch the holes in it. Alright, I gotta take such a thin kerf off. It was gonna be easier to just put it in the mill and mill it off. So I got it stood up. It's clamped between 2 pieces of angle iron to keep it rigid so that it's not bouncing outside the vice jaws. So alright, so I cleaned the paint off. It's all cut to size, milled off. It's nice and square. Turned out pretty good, actually. I got most of, there's one little, right here, there's still one little burn mark, but it cleaned up the rest of the way down. Rather than trying to lay out that whole pattern and make a dimensional rundown to go down there and hit them readout, because the hole spacing on this, of all stupid things, is an inch and 9/16, or inch and 9/16. Of all stupid, why they couldn't have made that an even freaking number, I don't know. So you end up with a bunch of goofy dimensions going down, and then you throw this fitting in, and then these four get really funny. So it was easier to lay out put a lay line on there and lay that on top and just center punch the holes out, and then I can just go down and hit them with the mill. So sometimes the low-tech way is the easiest way. But since I'm still zeroed off the back of the vise, I can just, because they're 3 inches off of this edge, I can just at least set it to 3 inches and just go down and hit the marks. I don't know what kind of paint they had on here, but it does not smell very good when it gets hot. Alright, that's all bolted up. I got the T swung around, so with the gauge ports going off the right side. It's not tight, it's just, they're just on there to show that it fits. Obviously, can't put any paint on it or anything yet until we figure out where the upright's going to be and how tall, and then weld all that together. And then it can all get painted and then go on the toolbar. So that takes care of that part for the time being. So, with that, I think we're kind of stuck on the toolbar. Well, I'll be able to get the center mass put on tomorrow once the paint dries on those two straps. So I think we're pretty much stuck on the toolbar for the time being. I got my order, I put my order in through Shoot for all my tillage iron yesterday or last night, but because I ordered 38 18-inch disc blades, apparently they won't ship that through UPS for some reason. That's got to come truck freight, so it's probably going to be more than one day getting that here. So I won't have my knives yet tomorrow. My burnouts for the hitch and the mounting plate for the pump are supposed to be done sometime yet this week. So I can't do anything in that respect until that stuff gets here. Can't do anything with the drive wheel until we get the pump mount situated. So yeah, I think we're pretty much stuck on the toolbar for the time being. So tomorrow we might start cutting the cart apart to modify, because that needs to start getting on a roll. I think that's a good direction to go in, because I can't think of anything else we can do right offhand. So we will start tackling that tomorrow. But I tell you what, if this get the forklift warming up, if this weather persists, I think we've got a slight chance of rain Thursday, and I mean slight. It's supposed to be kind of nasty and windy. Come on. But if it doesn't rain at all on Thursday, it's supposed to be really nice Friday. It's supposed to be up to dang near 60 and sunny. I'm thinking Saturday I might try to chop some stalks. I think it might be dry enough. I mean, I don't think I'd try to do much else, but with that stalk chopper, you don't have, between it and the 1955, you don't have a whole lot of weight, and you got a lot of tire on the ground. So I think we should be able to get over a lot of what I got to chop, except for the muck. There's no getting down on the muck until spring. That's a swamp down there, and the bad parts at my uncle's, will have to go around that, but that ain't gonna get, we ain't gonna get on that till probably spring either. But the long-term forecast, other than next week it's supposed to get a little chilly again, which doesn't bother me none. We don't really have much in the way of snow, and we don't really have much in the way of rain, so we might be in for a dry second half of winter here. I don't know if this kind of weather persists. It might not be too far out of the question to possibly sneak a little chisel plowing in by the end of the month on some of the high ground, maybe. I'm not going to hold my breath on it, but it's a slight possibility, because now that we've been out of the rain cycle, I mean, it's greasy, but it ain't terrible. Other than all the spots that were still standing full of water up until, well, most of the spots that were standing full of water are still standing full of water, so. But we'll just have to see how it plays out. It's in the back of my mind that it might be a slight possibility, because 3 weeks of drying, if we don't get a bunch of rain, it's possible. So anyhow, we'll catch you guys tomorrow. All right, so I got lucky and my burnout showed up today. So I was able to get all the 3-point parts put on. So that worked out, and they turned out pretty good. Everything fit right. They must have ran their Cat 2 setups wide, because industry standard for a Cat 2 hitch is 32-inch center to center on your lower links, and they set this up for 35. And I checked the book. The book says from center line of toolbar, which is right here, to the outside edge of the inside angle, so outside edge, inside angle, is 16 3/16, and it is, both of them where they are at now is right dead nuts at 16 3/16 in that dimension. So, and it's still too narrow for a Cat 3, because a Cat 3 is damn near 38 inches across. So, but anyway, so because my burnout showed up, because these are the guys I was waiting on, we can actually start working on the rear hitch. And I'm hoping that the 3x3 box tube that I saved off of the, I need to loosen that up and slide that guy in a little bit. That one's going a little wonky. Anyhow, I'm hoping that the 3x3 box that I cut off the toolbar on the anhydrous applicator that we're salvaging. I'm hoping I'll have enough off of that to do what I need to do. So we need to do a little measuring. Okay, so this is a rough sketch of the hitch. There'll be a couple more pieces added, but this is the A-frame. So, and I guess we can walk out here next to the toolbar so that you can see what I'm talking about. In order to keep this thing short for storage purposes, because you don't, I mean, you're only, you know, it's not that deep, so it'd be nice to keep it that way, so that if you want to set it up against the wall in the barn or something, or just to make storage easier, to make it take up less dead floor space. So you don't want, because I was looking at making the hitch at least 40 inches hanging back here, that way if you got to cut it tight, you're not dragging the cart into the toolbar. But you don't want, because right, it's 28 inches base, it's 27 and some change, but basically 28 inches from the back of the toolbar to the back of the coulter frame. So you'd have had another, what, 12 inches, no, 28 plus 2 plus 10, 4, yeah, so you'd have had another foot hanging back here at least. So in order to negate that and make this thing more storage friendly, I'm going to make a stubby A-frame that's going to be 28 inches from the back of the toolbar, and there will be a, and this is where we can go back to the drawbar. So stubby A-frame, 28 inches deep. Keep that in mind. Which will be this box tube that I saved off the applicator. And then there will be a tube welded long ways in here. A piece of 3x3 by 3/16 wall that a piece of 2.5 inch by 2.5 inch box tube will slide into, and basically gonna make a receiver socket. And then there'll just be I can make a receiver that'll slide in there that'll be as long as I need it to be to get my drawbar point back here somewhere. And then when you want to go put it in the barn so that you don't have this big tail hanging back out here, you pull a pin, you take it out, you just throw it on top of the toolbar, and next thing you know, you're only 30 inches, or that'd be longer than 30 inches, 40 inches deep or whatever it would be for the toolbar. It's going to be end up a little long out the front because of the pump mount, but hopefully when the pump mount's done, when you go to put that into storage, you can pull a bolt out of the mount and swing the wheel up and lean it over the toolbar so that you don't have that big dork hanging out the front. By the way, I don't think I mentioned that the pump mount's going off the front now, which that'll all make sense when we start working on it. So keep that out of your mind for now. When the time comes to work on that, then that'll all make sense. So I had to pull out my trig in geometry, which it's been a long time since I had to use any of that. I had to remember, I mean, Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, that's easy enough to do. That one I got committed to memory, but SOHCAHTOA, it took me a sine, cosine, tangent, it took me a minute to remember, and I had to go back and look that up. So basically for our legs, once you do everything, it's gonna, the long side before you cut the angles is gonna be 33.152, which comes up like 33 and 5/30 seconds, I think, ish. And the angles are gonna be a 40 and a 50. So the angles here, the way I drew it, are exaggerated, but that was where the trig came in, because I had to remember, okay, I know my 90-degree angle here because you go to your center and then that makes that leg there. You're not using the whole thing, so you make a 90-degree triangle and yada, yada, yada. And you know one angle and you know all three sides, and you could use all that to find your other angles. So I found that angle, and it's like, oh wait, I don't need to do it for that one because 3 angles of a triangle make 180. So that plus that minus 180 is going to be, or 180 minus that is going to be that. So pay attention in school, kids. At least trig and geometry. Those two are the ones that you can actually do something useful with. I have yet to find anything useful for calculus. At least in anything I'll ever do in life. I hated calculus with a passion, but I loved geometry and trig because that was the one thing that you could look at and go, yep, I can see using that at some point. Calculus, not so much. I'm sure that there's some good use for it, but nothing I'll ever do. So anyway, we can, actually, before I run out of daylight, I'm going to take that toolbar and get it out of the driveway. And then we should be able to get some steel cut. And hopefully everything, we'll use this for the legs. That's the socket tube. And yeah, we'll see what we can do here. Okay, I got my pieces cut. Just to make sure I did my math right, I laid angle lines out to make sure, and then I laid it on the bench and squared it up with an edge to make sure everything was going to come out roughly right, and it looks like it's going to come out roughly right. So I switched the saw over to the miter clamp. This is actually the stock clamp that comes with this, or vise, whatever you want to call it, that comes with this saw. And it kind of sucks for just about anything except for cutting angles, so Dad bought that vise for it. And the only time this one comes out is when we need to cut angles, so.
Dogs are in the house.
Okay. There's one, so I can cut the other one in the same setup, and then this miter gauge on here only goes to 45 degrees, but I think there's enough in the slot to get the 50-degree angle that I need down here, so fingers crossed. Otherwise, we'll have to do something a little different. It just barely has enough slot to get to a 50-degree angle. I wouldn't want to have to go much more. Okay, well, I made a little boo-boo. I had to go back and recut my angles. A good example of you should run redundant equations to double check your work. Obviously it's been a long time since I had to use sine, cosine, tangent, so I had to get online and remember which letters were in SOHCAHTOA so I knew what size went with which equation. Well, for the TOA part, I had TOH instead of TOA, so I used opposite over hypotenuse instead of opposite over adjacent, and that kind of screws your angles up, and that carries through all the way through your math. So kicker of it is, if I'd used sine or cosine, I would have got the right numbers because I had those written down right. It was only tangent that I screwed up, and that's the equation that I just so happened to choose to use. So my angles were actually 32.5 and 57.5, but once you get those in there, everything comes out just right. But because I overcut this one, I ended up having to come back on the long side a little bit, and I ended up losing basically an inch off the long side. So I lost just a little over an inch. So from the tip to here is now about 27-ish, and I lost a ½ inch on my spread. So instead of 38.5, it's now 38, so quarter inch aside, no big deal. It's just gonna be, you'll never notice it standing 10 feet away. You'll never notice it standing 5 feet away. So now those are cut, we're good to go there. The last thing I have to do is punch a cross hole for a pin in this guy and come back in here somewhere. We'll leave a tail sticking out, and then once this is all welded up, I'm gonna make a truss that goes across here that this gets welded into and ties these two together so that this is all nice and rigid. And then there'll be a piece welded here that goes up to the center link mast for vertical stability. So really shouldn't have a whole lot. I'll have 3 holes to drill tomorrow, a hole to drill in that, and I'll have to punch 2 holes in a piece of flat stock to catch the 2 holes in the top of the 3-point mast, and the rest will be welding together. And then the nice thing about doing this setup, having it a receiver style, is I can actually make my hitch a drop leg to get it closer to the ground, so that when you're all the way raised, you don't have the hitch 5 feet off the ground and the cart's having to reach clear up here. So we can make a drop leg in the receiver hitch. So anyhow, we will return to this project tomorrow and hopefully at least have the A-frame finished up. And I don't know if I'll paint it yet or not. Well, it probably won't get painted tomorrow because we may end up welding more brackets on it to hold hoses and stuff. But we can get it, hopefully tomorrow it will be welded up and bolted on there for test fit purposes. And we'll go from there. So anyhow, catch you tomorrow. Well, I think Mother Nature's gonna see fit that we don't get this hitch welded up today, because I'm gonna have to at least have it on the frame long enough to get it tacked into place, and then we could take it off and take it back inside and get it welded up solid. But we got a pretty sustained wind, and I just don't think that that's going to work very well. So I think the most we're going to be able to do is get my pinhole punched in for the receiver tube, and we can get the A-frame tacked up so that it's easier to hold up here to get welded together. We can get the holes drilled in my cross piece for my brace that's going to come down, and I'm going to make a spacer block that goes here, and then either with these 2 holes or these 2 holes, whichever I end up using, that spacer block is going to catch, or will be there, and off the back of this, actually I might not even need to use a spacer block because we can just go off of this side. So yeah, I don't even need to make the spacer block. That makes life easier. So let's go off the front. I think we can finish the mount for the visi gauges today and get a coat of paint put on that, hopefully. So let's go back, get on the mill, get my holes punched in. Well, let me draw it up real quick, and we'll see what we can get done today. I've also got a guy coming to look at some parts he's buying, so we'll see how long, or see how much time that burns up. Okay, for the strap that's going to span the 3-point tree, I'm using another chunk of steel off of the anhydrous applicator. And actually, just a little bit. I measured it, and I think I need 9 inches, and I measured it, and I thought I could get 9 inches. Yeah, I gotta hug them bolt holes tight, but I can't get 9 inches out of it. Tighter than that. Alright, I cleaned all the paint off of it, so that's going to make life easier. This is old enough. This should be good American steel, not cheap Chinese steel. $75. Lock it. Perfect. Alright, so there's that strap done. So now we can start. Oops. We're back into regular. Now we can punch this hole for my cross pin in. This one I obviously can't use that stubby bit on, we got to get through all 3 inches of tube, so got to center drill it and then use a full-length jobber bit so we can get all the way through both sides. The nice thing about those small bits that you've seen me using up to this point is they don't need a center drill, because they will self-center because they're so short. You use a bit like this, if you don't pilot drill it with a small drill, they'll walk off center, or use a center drill, one of the two. I'm drilling this for a 5/8 bolt, since everything else holding this cultivator together has been 5/8. Might as well keep the pin 5/8, or bolt, or whatever I end up using. Probably just a bolt. Alright, there's those. So, before I do any welding, while I've still got some daylight, we're going to go up and grab the 1600 to use as a model. And I'm going to, because the 1800 got the snowblower on it, I don't feel like unhooking it. We're going to back up to the toolbar so I can sit in the seat and see where I want my gauges to be. so we can figure out how long the pole needs to be, and then we can make that up real quick and get hopefully get them visi gauges. Although I realized I still can't finish that part today because I don't have my stainless steel pipe coupling, but we can get it all welded up except for that. Alright, so basically when I'm sitting in the seat, I held the gauges up. If I cut whatever I end up finding, something 36 inches tall, where I was holding it was 34, we'll just go to 36 to make it a nice round 3 feet, and that'll put the gauges in a nice spot to view from, the seat. The wings end up like in here somewhere, and they're all forward of, so having them here will miss everything. So we just have to find something to use for a post. Okay, so here is, I found a piece of thin wall, 1 or 1.5 by 1.5 box. I think it's like 16th wall, it's really thin, but it'll be plenty strong for what we need it to do. However, because it is thin wall, and we're going to be pulling on it with 5/8 bolts, and then the drawbar is going to be pulling on it too, we don't want this thing to fold up like a tin can, so we over drill the holes down here where the bolts are going to go, and then weld a piece of pipe in there to act as a bushing / spacer, so that you're actually pulling on the pipe, not pulling on the tube. And you just weld those weld the 2 chunks of pipe in there, and you're good to go. So I got my whole layout figured out, so we can go ahead and do that. The first thing we got to do is punch this little 1/4-inch clearance hole down here on this end, because it is going to share one of the mounting bolts that holds one of the gauge towers on. So that will go right here. And then down here on the other end, in order to get a hole big enough to get our pipe in, we need a nice round drill size of 55/64. Poor drill shank on this thing's ate up just a hair. Which is kind of surprising, because like, how often do you need to use a 55/64 drill? Alright, hole drilled, spacers made. I cut them a 1/4 inch long, so I'll have an 1/8 inch of reveal on both sides to give me something to weld to. Just have to find some 1/8 inch Joe blocks to set under it, and that'll set my spacing. We can weld them in, weld it to the plate. Away we go. Okay, I got this guy laid out. I got a piece of box tube clamped to the bench to use as a straight edge to buck everything up against. I got my spread set right, and everything's tied up here. I got my reveal set where I want it, so we just put 4 really good heavy tacks on this just in case for some reason we got to bust it back apart. But you want nice heavy tacks so that nothing moves once we get it held up and clamped up against the toolbar to weld it to the mounting plates. That way you're not fighting a bunch of loose parts. You get it set here and then tack it up there, and then once everything's tacked together, take it back out and we can weld it solid. And the other thing that we can do while it's on the toolbar, and we should be able to get it cut yet tonight, is while it's on the toolbar, you weld your truss. You weld your truss in here, and once that's set, no matter what you do for welding, there's not enough heat going anywhere while you're welding hot up here for it to, that'll keep it from expanding or contracting out here on the end. So, but we'll throw some good tacks on there, and that'll be about as far as we can go on this for the time being. Made sure to find the right angles this time. There, that's generally how it's supposed to fit the first time without having to recut angles. So that can get tacked in once we get it up on the frame and start tacking everything together. And I guess technically it could get tacked in right now, but we'll wait just because it's that much less weight to handle getting it put into position. So, because right now it's pretty stout. It's heavier than I thought it'd be. I mean, it's not super duper heavy, but it's heavy enough. So I'm gonna deburr this and clean the paint up where it's gonna get welded together and clean my mess up and call it a night. So I guess with that being said, that's it for this one. We'll catch you guys on the next one.